Okay, so a we're starting a new set of laws known as Amir al-Nakhri. What are you permitted and not permitted in what way to tell or really to have a Gentile do for you or around you on the Shabbos? So these are complicated laws because it affects, especially today, all of us all the time. We may not realize it. For instance, um, shipping. Today we have everyone lives with receiving packages, Amazon. How does that work? Etc. When it comes to things that are done for you on the Shabbos. Okay, so we'll start off. It says like this. Asr lahaniach le'ene Yehudi shiyasa meleches Yisrael b'Shabbos. This is the fundamentals of the law. It's forbidden for a Jewish person to have a non-Jewish person, a Gentile, do work for you on the Shabbos. Usmachuhu, and what is the basis for this prohibition? Based on the pasuk that says, "Kol malacha lo asa." No work should be done for you; it should be get done. Which in the mashma that implies Yehudi, even if a Gentile will be doing the work for you, that shouldn't be done on the Shabbos for you. Okay, so V'im Moisher Lein Yehudi es Amlacha B'Erev Shabbos. However, if you give the job, and there's many jobs you hire someone to do for you, whether it's a tailor or any job you hire that someone is doing work that could be forbidden on the Shabbos. So how does that work? So it says, "V'im moisher lein Yehudi." If you give it something, a job to do to a Gentile, the Erev Shabbos before the Shabbos, Afal pi sheha'eni Yehudi ois b'Shabbos. This is just the basis of it. Even if the Gentile will end up doing the work for you on Shabbos, mutter, then it's permitted. So here, what's the basis, the prohibition that on the Shabbos you're not allowed to tell anyone to do or hire anyone to do work for you on the Shabbos, even if that person is not obligated to keep the Shabbos, i.e. a Gentile, any Yehudi. So hey, Aaron. So the any Yehudi is so on the Shabbos you're not allowed to do it, but if you give it to them before the Shabbos, even if on the Shabbos they're going to do work for you, that's okay. So that's the basis of the frame of the laws of Amir al-Nachi, of a Gentile doing work for you on Shabbos. But in that there's many conditions. Avrak, but the condition is be'eloi fanim, only in certain ways are you allowed to have even that you give a job or instruct on before the Shabbos, meaning Erev Shabbos, to have the Gentile do work for you on the Shabbos. So number one condition is she'eni aleph she'eni Yehudi yikach ha'chayfetz mibeisei she'Yisrael koydem Shabbos v'loy b'Shabbos. Even if you were to hire someone to do something for you, again, we're talking about, and just this is the basis of the law. And there's a lot of details that we're going to learn now, and we're going to have to learn later when we get to the more details of the law. But one of the conditions, the number one condition, is that they, even if you assign them to do something for you before the Shabbos, they have to remove the job from your property before Shabbos. So if, let's say, for instance, a tailor, if you want a tailoring on Shabbos is prohibited. That's one of the 39 malachas, is to sew on to sew. So you're not allowed to sew on Shabbos. If you wanted a tailor to do a job for you and you give it to them before Shabbos, the non-Jew cannot come on Shabbos and pick up from you for you. Barbara's having a problem getting on. For you on the Shabbos and pick it up anytime after sunset Friday night until sunset on Saturday night. So again, the basis of the law is that it says kol malacha lo yasa. You're not allowed to make work happen on the Shabbos. So no matter what, even if the Gentile were to come pick up a clothing on Shabbos, you are not allowed to sign a job on the Shabbos for the Gentile to do for you on Shabbos. That's prohibited. We're talking about jobs that are prohibited for you. Hold on, Rebecca. Jobs that are prohibited for you to do on Shabbos. If you tell them to do before the Shabbos, you hire them to do before the Shabbos. We're not talking about just servants. We're talking about even any labor. If you're doing it, if you organize it before the Shabbos, it's permitted, and we'll learn the conditions for it. But that's the number one condition is it has to be removed from your property before the Shabbos. Yes, Rebecca.
I don't want to interrupt. I'm assuming you're probably going to talk about this, but my understanding was that you can't make it so that the only time they can do that work for
Yes.
you is on Shabbos. But if
Yes.
you drop the thing off at the cleaners, let's say Thursday, and you tell them you don't need it until Tuesday or whatever, then you're giving them time to do it that's not on Shabbos, and then it would be okay, correct?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to get to that. But right now, as we stand now in Halacha Aleph, we didn't even get to that limitation. We just said that if as long as you assign them before the Shabbos, they're allowed to do it for you on the Shabbos as long as they remove it before the Shabbos. So we didn't get to that condition where, for instance, where we're going to get to where overnight delivery, right? Are you allowed to send going Friday to FedEx and pay for specifically overnight delivery? You know, they tell you it will be delivered to this person. Welcome, Barbara. I understood you had some problems with the internet. If you're, FedEx will give you pay so much money if it's delivered before 10 o'clock, before 7 o'clock, before 5 o'clock. So there you're actually making them do something for you on Shabbos because it has to be delivered on the Shabbos.
Right. But I asked my Rav once if it's okay to drop something in the mail on Friday afternoon, and he said it's okay.
Because the regular mail it's not your business how fast they do it. You're not paying for the stamp that should be delivered on a certain date. But if you're going into FedEx and you're paying for
Oh, I see.
specific delivery, that's different. Okay,
Okay,
so
got it.
we'll get to all that. Okay, let's see. So number one is the prohibition of having a Gentile do work for you in general on the Shabbos. So the footnote number one is okay, and it gets more complicated with Amazon. You know, when you have so the Amazon delivery packages, and I saw most poskim paskin, just to getting ahead of ourselves, and most poskim paskin that it's not even when Amazon says it gives themselves space, and that space usually is enough time for you to protect yourself for the Shabbos. Like it says, we guarantee up to a certain point, it will be delivered by a certain date, but doesn't not like FedEx, which says it's for sure going to come at this time. So if you have a little, if they have a little time, even if they rush it, it's not your problem. But if the only way for them to deliver it and fulfill what you paid them for is to work on Shabbos, and that's a condition that you've set for them, then there's a prohibition on that. Okay, so footnote number one is virtually all poskim agree that telling a non-Jew to do work for you on the Shabbos is a rabbinical prohibition. Meaning what he's saying is it's a rabbinical prohibition as opposed to a biblical prohibition. Hey, Barbara. Footnote number three. Okay, here we're talking about the verse that says no man of work shall be done, which implies even the Gentile. So he says in footnote number three, the Beis Yosef, the Smag, Rashi, quoted in the Chumash, see Rashi in Shabbos. So he said like this is a prohibition because the non-Jew is your shliach, agent. So when it's the question, what the footnote is addressing is, what is the connection between the verse that says kol melacha lo ye asa, no work should get done. So the Gentile is not your service, not your slave. This is a person that's his job or her job to work. But in this case, when you're paying them for a specific job to be done, that right then that person becomes your shliach. It's an extension of you. And if it's an extension of you, it's your agent, and you're part of the job getting done, and that's a problem. And it is as though you did it yourself. Now, again, we're learning the Kitzur. The laws of Shabbos are very complex, and it gets even more complex when you team that up. Hold on, Aaron. You team that up with the question of shliach, of agent. Halachically, a Jew cannot make a Gentile a shliach. For instance, in other things, when a person's permitted to have a shliach, for instance, in the case of divorce, other cases where we have shlichus in Torah, where we have. So the question is, if here we're attributing that, we're saying that as if you've done it. Can the Gentiles be as if you've done it halachically? So that's another question. But let's just see what it says here. So that it's a problem of an agent, and as though you yourself did it. See also Rashi Masechtas Vodazar. Yes, Aaron.
Okay. The shuls have a different ruling because every shul I know in Brooklyn has a Gentile, and they open and close and heat up water and all kinds of things.
Okay, we're going to learn about that. It's called Amir al-Rachi. In what instances are Gentiles allowed? Yeah, so far, we've learned one thing. You're not allowed to, on Shabbos, tell a Gentile to do work for you on Shabbos. That's prohibited. So in those cases, that already excludes everything you've mentioned, because those are old jobs that usually are assigned to the person that's working on Shabbos before Shabbos. On Friday, the gabbai, whoever's in charge of your shul, will tell them that this X, Y, and Z has to get done on Shabbos. But that's that. But even that, which could be a problem, we'll discuss how it's not a problem. But number one is, first thing is that the article that they're working on, that for instance in sewing or cleaning, that cannot be done in your house. That has to be taken out. But your question that you're discussing will be addressed. If you give work directly to the non-Jew on Friday, so then it's permitted as long as they take it out of your house, your property on Shabbos. It says if the need is great, whatever the job is. So he says in footnote number 5, and the non-Jew came on Friday night after dark to take the article, that you may give it to him if, let's say, you signed the job before Shabbos. And this is the Bir Halacha. And for whatever reason, the Gentile was supposed to come on Friday morning and shows up on Friday evening, and that's especially in the winter where Shabbos could come in at 3, 4 o'clock. So, then that's in a case where it's a great need, then there could be leniency in that situation. Obviously, great need has to be taken in context, not just, I really want it. It could be something important. Level of great need has to be defined by your local rabbi. So that's number one. We're going to get to your other questions that you've both asked in a second. So condition number 1 is it has to be removed from the property before Shabbos. Condition number 2, Beis, you have to pre-establish the wages for the Gentile of the work that they're going to be doing for you. And when that person is getting paid, so even though they're working on Shabbos and they're doing a malacha for you on Shabbos, but they're not really doing work for you, they're doing work for their pay. If someone asks you, what are you doing? I said, this is my salary, this is my job, I'm getting paid. So the work itself is now attributed to the person, him or herself, because they're working for themselves to get paid. It's their profession that gives them a livelihood. That's the reason why they're working now is so they should get paid. So it's not that they're working for you. Again, the job, the problem over here is not the pay. The problem is the malacha, the job. As soon as we add payment to it, so now that the fact that they're working on the Shabbos is for themselves, and you've not hired them on the Shabbos. So you kind of avoided hiring them on Shabbos, and then now they're working for themselves because they're being paid. Yes, Aaron.
I think we discussed this, but use this in the context of what we're talking about now. You mentioned an example of Taylor. So it states, or I heard from you, that you can't bring your stuff so many minutes before Shabbos, even if it's before Shabbos, and it's not really work. You can't give it to a tailor because he would have to finish it on Shabbos.
That's only if he has to finish on Shabbos. Again, the laws of Amir al-Nachri come down to two things. Not every job that is forbidden is your problem. I mean, there's a lot of rules that let's stop and go over a few rules. There's a lot of rules. Like, for instance, rule number 1, you're saying that the Gentile turns on the dishwasher on Shabbos. That's his business or her business. As far as you're concerned, if they could also wash it by hand, it's their own convenience to put on the dishwasher. So it's something that makes their life easier. When I say them, I'm just saying we're talking about in context of the laws of Shabbos. Something that makes the employee's job easier, because they'd rather turn on a dishwasher, which is much easier than washing by hand. That's not your problem. And same thing applies to other prohibitions that may seem like they're doing work that are prohibited on Shabbos. That's just making their life easier. It's not attributed to you,
Okay,
as long as they're being paid. So same thing when you're talking about the tailor The tailor, if you're giving a job that the only way for them to do the job is that they have to do it on Shabbos, like the delivery of a FedEx, right? You're specifically paying them to deliver it on Shabbos. So then it becomes, Barbara, I see your hand. I'll get to you in a second. So then it becomes a problem. But if you're for Amazon packages, I've checked in the halacha of Amazon packages. Usually Amazon, even Amazon Prime, gives themselves a little bit more than 24-hour time. And if that, and because they don't want to be, accountable for the exact. So because of that little bit of time, it's their business if they want to have the driver drive on Shabbos or before or after Shabbos.
Okay, but now my
As long as
question,
as long as they have the ability to get it done on their own time, that's not Shabbos, then it's not your problem if they
okay,
choose.
but people, let's say, give it an example. You have a apartment, so on Friday you're gonna read. Now you're gonna come back to your house, and you have someone who works in your house. It says your maid servants, everyone even has to take a break. You can't make them work inside your own house. So now you're having lunch at your house, and you have this Goyim serving you, opening up the ovens.
Okay, what are Gentiles allowed to do on Shabbos in your house is all a question. Again, it depends when you tell them. It depends when it's done. It depends when it's.
What about you can't have a maid servant work in your house on Shabbos? You have to give them a day off.
You have to give them a day off. You have to give them a day off. We're not talking about a slave here. Slave is your possession. A person who's an employee is not a slave. If you have a cleaning service, they're not a slave. They're a service that you're paying for.
Okay.
But it says in Torah, your servants can't work for you on Shabbos. That's talking about in ancient times when you had slaves, where you bought them at a market and you didn't pay them salary. You just have to feed them. Here we're talking about service. A person who's a house cleaner in your house is an employee like any other employee. Yes, Barbara.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I'm sorry, I had trouble with my internet trying to get on tonight. My computer and the internet just kept booting me out. So what section are we on at this
Okay,
time?
so we're just starting Bays number 2 of chapter 73, discussing
So
the. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I had a quick question about, so when you have people who have non-Jews come in to turn their lights on and off for them, is that considered work? I mean, they're getting paid.
That's a problem. No, if there's it all depends on when it's being told. If to just open up to just have a Gentile come into your house on Shabbos off the street and turn off the light or on the light, it's a problem. There's ways of doing it. There's hinting. There has to be benefit. Again, all these things that benefit Hefsid Meruba. There's all details that we're going to have to get into. But just basically to have someone do work, to tell someone to do work for you that is prohibited on Shabbos, and there's no other way to do it, and they're doing it just for you without having any benefit themselves is not allowed. Okay, but we'll get through all the details. Okay, so here we're saying like this. The wages should be, let's first finish inside. So one rule is the person has to get paid for it, because then they're working for themselves. Number 2 is this is Aaron's question. Someone who has a servant, for an appointed time. Then it's prohibited to have that person do work for you on Shabbos. Why? There's only a benefit for the Jew. We're talking about a kind of service that it's not a pay service by the hour or by the job. Even being paid by the hour is a problem. But being paid by the job because there's no benefit for the Gentile. Now, what about a Gentile? You know that he's traveling or she's traveling somewhere on Shabbos. And you're asking them to take a letter for you, a package, right? And that person is going to carry the package and schlep it for you, which is you're not allowed to do because you're carrying and taking and going out of the distance that you could go on the Shabbos. So then again, we're not talking about where you're paying them exactly like the overnight express, but they're doing work for you. So then you have to pay them. You have to give them benefit. If they don't have benefit and they're just doing something for you, that creates a problem. So the Gentiles doing it for their work and not for free. When it's for free, it's not a question of relationship. It's a question of the connection of the job and the person doing the job. And there's three people here, right? You have the person who asks a favor, in this case, a favor. There's the thing that's being done, and the person who's doing it, a favor. The job itself is a prohibition on Shabbos, of the taking the package. The person who's sending it has the obligation to keep Shabbos, the Jew. The Gentile has no obligation to keep Shabbos. As long as he has no benefit or she has no benefit, it's an extension for the Jewish person's obligation of keeping Shabbos, and therefore it's a prohibition. Once you put money in there, where the person gets, however, the person's getting paid, it no longer just becomes a job that's being done or favor that's being done for the Jew. Now there's a benefit for the Gentile. Once there's a benefit for the Gentile, he or she is now doing the job for themselves and is no longer just an agent of yours. Okay, let's see the footnotes inside. It's footnote number 6. It says you have to give the non-Jew wages in advance, set in advance. Also, the price has to be set in advance. So he says in footnote number 6, it is sufficient to tell him or her that you will pay him properly if there is a standard fee. It means you don't have to discuss necessarily exactly how much is being paid if there's a standard fee that's usually paid for this job. You need mention only that you will pay him or her without stipulating the amount. That's okay. Even when it is accepted that everyone pays for such work, you still must mention to the non-Jew that you will pay. The Bir Halacha says it's not enough that the job always gets paid, because if you never discuss that, in this case it's being paid, you're paying. In theory, halachically, you may not be obligated to pay, because you could say, I never discussed this as a paid job. This was a free job. So therefore, you have to be very clear that there is payment involved, based on the Shulchan Aruch and Magen Avram. Yes, Aaron.
So my guard, we have
You?
24-hour guards. So they're paid by a company, and we move in and our rent covers their pay. So
Try to talk a little clearer, because you're very muffled.
okay. Can you hear me now?
A little better, yeah.
Okay. So we have guards, 24-hour guards. So on Shabbos, our rent helps subsidize his pay. And so we don't ask him anything, but our rabbi said if he will open up the elevator for you, push all the buttons, and you do nothing, and you don't ask him, then it's acceptable for you to go in the elevator. So he didn't, so we just show up with our yarmulkes on. He knows we're Jewish, so they push the button for us. So he said, but now you're saying about pay, so I'm just asking. He gets paid by the hour. Well, something like that.
It doesn't really, and there's havla. He doesn't get paid at the end of the day. It's included in the week or weekly or monthly payment or biweekly payment. So all these are part of the law. You didn't ask him to do it. He's doing it on his own. He understands. Again, these are all. It's not preferable, but it's in the case where you have in New York or other places. You're not the only one who doesn't have a Shabbos elevator.
It kept breaking out. It kept breaking down because it overheats.
Okay, well, either way, but so then traditionally, what your rabbi paskin is permissible. Most people go with that psak. Okay, let's look at footnote number 7. We're talking about if you have any Jewish servant, he says here, for a predetermined period of time, it is forbidden to allow him or her to do any work for you on the Shabbos. Okay, this holds true even when he or she does not do the work in your house, and even when you did not tell him to do it. So this is talking about a case of what Aaron was alluding to, the verse that says that your servants should not work for you on the Shabbos. So if that servant is a servant, even if it's a period of time, so the work is a connection to you. It's not just an agent of yours, but it's actually, this is the prohibition that your property shouldn't work. Some say you must protest his doing it in your house, even when he's doing it for himself. The Taz, which is when the commentary says that in such a case of a servant, we're not talking about an employee, but in a servant, in the biblical sense. So even if that person were to do a prohibition on Shabbos for themselves, nothing to do with you, but that's what's considered, that the Torah includes as part of your property. The Eliyahu Rabbah permits it when they do it for themselves, because their totally has nothing to do with you. The Chai Adam permits it when he does something that is obviously for his own benefit. So I guess if it has to be more obvious as opposed to just being for themselves without being obvious. For his own benefit, see Mishnah Brura, see Kitzur, paragraph 8 and footnote 19. Okay, footnote number 8 says, now if you ask a favor from a Gentile to carry a package for you, so then you have to give them some pay. So the Chai Adam permits mailing letters on Erev Shabbos, and we'll see the Pri Megadim. So this is what Rebecca says. If you're allowed to put mail, but again, mail is surely not a problem. Because even if you know the system of the mailman, the mailman's not your employee. You don't have a contract with the mailman that they have to come pick it up on the Shabbos. If they weren't to pick it up on the Shabbos, you have no one to complain to, even if you know that for sure the mailman pick it up on Shabbos. We're not talking about overnight express mail. That is a different law, because there you're specifically paying the person to do a job for you on Shabbos. And they have to do it on the Shabbos because they're accepting on themselves to deliver it by a certain point. As long as they can get the job done outside of the Shabbos, then it's not your problem. And that's why I checked online that almost everyone agrees that there's no prohibition about ordering something on Amazon, even if they say that it's most likely going to be delivered on Shabbos, but that's their prerogative. I mean, they could decide if for whatever reason it doesn't get delivered on Shabbos, so there's a delay. It doesn't have the same contract, so to say, like overnight express. Yes.
Are you okay?
Yeah, try to talk into the mic.
Yeah, okay. So use your example of Amazon. They can deliver whatever they want. So they deliver it, it comes on Shabbos. Are you allowed to take it through your door because they left it at your door because you're in shul?
Say that again.
Okay. So as you said,
just the last part.
Okay. Can you take it through your door if they left it on the porch because you were at shul?
In a way that it's permissible for you usually to carry it on Shabbos?
Can you carry it through your door? Because is your porch, if there's no roof and your porch is part of your house?
Again, so there's two separate questions. If you're talking about a question of carrying from outside domain into private domain, that's a separate question that depends on the makeup of the house. There could even be a problem to take it, even if it's permissible to move it, because although the Gentile dropped it off in your house, now you're getting involved in a package that was brought to you on Shabbos. We'll have to discuss that. But if you're talking about a question of bringing it from outside to inside, that's a separate question. That's a question of that arises also, for instance, the paper boy. The paper boy also gets, once upon a time, the people got the paper delivered to their house. Some people still get it done on a daily basis. Could you get the Saturday New York Times delivered to your house, or the Sunday Times delivered to your house just for Saturday? These are questions that have to be discussed. Okay. Hasacher yeh katuv l'chol hamalacha v'lo yeh ein Yehudi schir yoim. Another job, another condition is that the employee is not an hourly employee for the job. The job has to have in it a havla. It has to be able to mix it up with other days. So the entire job should be hired not by the day, because in the day then you're specifically paying the Gentile to do work for you on Shabbos. This goes into the famous section of Shulchan Aruch, Reish Mem Gimel, about in what ways the difference between kablanas, a job paid by the job versus paid by the hour or paid by the day. So a job payment kind of doesn't like, for instance, in theory, you're not paying FedEx money by the hour. You're paying FedEx money for the job. At the same time, if they have to do it on Shabbos, that's a problem. Okay, Asr, another problem. Question number 4. Asr likvoya la'eni Yehudi shi'asem malacha b'Shabbos. It is forbidden to stipulate with a non-Jew that he or she do the work on Shabbos. It means you're saying specifically doing on Shabbos. So this is the question of FedEx, right? If you go on Friday, and it also depends what time you come in. Really, I'm not sure, because people say it's forbidden. It's also dependent on what time you come in. If you come in early enough that even FedEx could get the job done before Shabbos, it's different than if the only way for them to get it from Seattle to New York is going to be done on the Shabbos. So it also depends what time in the morning you arrive to drop off the package. So for instance, there's some places, let's say you do FedEx overnight express. But in theory, there's enough time. It's within a area of space. People send FedEx is within the city, right? Let's say New York City itself. You may say you may hire a person but if there's enough time for them to do the job on Friday itself, then it's again not a problem. So here it says, also the kvoyer, here you're establishing that the non-Jew will do the job specifically on Shabbos. There's no other way out. It means there's no way for them not to do it on the Shabbos. Like in the case if you drop off a dress or a pair of pants and you want to pick it up 1 minute after Shabbos on Saturday night, and you drop it off 1 minute before Shabbos, where it's impossible for the Gentile to do the job that's not included the Shabbos, that's a problem. Even in they haven't said you have to do it on Shabbos, but you're not giving them time not to do it on Shabbos. You're establishing, or you're paying for a service that the job will be done so soon after Shabbos, or so will be available ready so soon after Shabbos, that the only way for the Gentile is for he or she to do it on the Shabbos. And you know that's impossible for them to do the job in that time without including work on the Shabbos. So then Gamkin is also a prohibition. Again, the regular mail does not problem, because there's you don't have a contract with the state, the mail company, that you have tinus. You could wonder why it's taking so long, and traditionally it takes a certain amount of time, but they have no obligation to send it to you, the regular mail. Hold on, Aaron, I'm going to finish the law. So if you send a letter and you say to the Gentile, it has to come on this specific day. And included in that day for the job to be done in the letter has to include Shabbos. If that's the case, Gamkinas is also a provision. That's the basis of overnight, the problem with overnight express. The reason why there's a leniency when it comes to Amazon. Again, this is not just everyone uses Amazon and everyone gets packages on Shabbos on your Amazon, right? So but over there, it's not impossible, and they're not obligated that they have to do it on Shabbos. That's what I've seen most people say. Aaron, I know you have a question, but just hang.
Yeah, I'm just hanging. I'm just taking notes.
Now, then, okay, ask now, because we're going to the next subject.
Okay. So what you're saying is that if I bring something to the tailor an hour before Shabbos, and I say I must have it Sunday morning for my bar mitzvah party, can't do it because he's going to have to work on Shabbos to get it to you by the morning.
No, that's not necessarily true, because there you have Sunday morning, he could work a whole set. No one says he can't work at night. If the tailor decides to work from 7 o'clock sundown Saturday night till 7 in the morning, 14 hours, and there's enough time in 14 hours to get the job done, that's not your problem. If he chooses to sleep a whole Shabbos, so he can work 3 months of Shabbos, and that he or she works 3 months of Shabbos, again, as long as making to go into the schedule of the Gentile, that's not called impossible. It means to say that yes, every Gentile needs to sleep and every Gentile needs to eat, and that's not your problem. It means if the Gentile chooses to do it in the day hours and sleep at night, that's not your calculation. But because in theory there's enough time for he or she to do the job in the hours that are there. It's just that most people will be sleeping in those hours, but that no one's forcing that person. Today in the tech world, right? A lot of people take jobs, and Microsoft. I remember in the beginning when Microsoft started, in Seattle, they didn't care when you get the job. If you're a night owl, that's your business. You just need to get the job done. They're not going to come to you and say, "Why didn't I see you working by day?" They want to see the results. That's kablanus. That's not your problem. Okay, the next question is about business. So we've talked about service up until this point. What about business, partnerships, assigning someone as a business agent, right? Let's say you're selling a house, and you hire a real estate agent, and most real estate agents' biggest day is Saturday and Sunday, right? And so they're working for you on that day, right? But they're working for themselves, really, for the commission. So all these questions come into play. So here we're talking about V'chemim Yom HaShuk Hu b'Shabbos. Let's say the only market day of your area is the Shabbos. So now we have problems. And you want to partner with the Gentile, or you're hiring a Gentile to represent your sales or purchases, for that matter, on the market day. So Asr Lasis Tanochim Mois Be'erev Shabbos. Here we're talking about purchasing. You're not allowed to give money to the Gentile before the Shabbos, even though you're doing it before the Shabbos. It's a market that's only open on Shabbos, right? There's plenty of marketplaces, even till today, that have the Saturday market, right? The public markets that open up in the streets, they can have an assigned day. And if that day is only on Shabbos, and you say, listen, I know that, so-and-so has a stall and so opens up. And this is the article that they sell, and the only day they could get it is on the Shabbos. So then basically you're going into a partnership. He or she is doing a job for you, a purchase for you that has to be done on the Shabbos. So then it's a prohibition. So too it's prohibited. The same thing applies to sales and purchasing. If you want to hire the Gentile to sell for you, and the only day the Gentile can sell for you is on the Shabbos, that's also, so here you're not giving money, but they're doing a sale for you on Shabbos. And the only day available to sell it would be the Shabbos. But if it's in a way that is not specifically that you say, you establish in a way that it has to be done on Shabbos, then it's not prohibited, even if it's going to be done on the Shabbos. Because this prohibition is only if you're giving to them right before the Shabbos. But if you're giving to them a few days before the Shabbos, even though the market day is on Shabbos, there's kind of a separation in time. We'll see the explanation why the time makes a difference. And then, but you shouldn't be living in the city kind of where you're on site of it happening. Because if you're living there, it's going to get complicated and it's going to be very difficult for you not to make a mistake. But if the market is not in your area, then it's like you're living out of the city. Okay, let's see the footnotes on this one, because that's a little complicated. So first we're going to go to footnote number 9. So footnote number 9 is right away into the market. Likewise, is the market day is forbidden to give the non-Jew money. Pri Megadim maintains that this is prohibited even if you do not give the non-Jew the money. It means, let's say, what is he referring to? Let's say you say, buy it for me and I'll pay you after Shabbos, or we have open credit, whatever it is. That doesn't have to be just if you give them a check, your credit card, or cash. So with the next law is they can only buy on the Shabbos. Similarly, this sentence does not appear in many editions of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch about selling. Doesn't say why it doesn't appear in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Okay, number 11 is about the question that we spoke about. I'm going to finish here and then open up the questions. Maybe we'll do one more law. Let's see how long it is. So the footnote number 11 is what's the difference between if you give it you give someone to sell or to buy right before Shabbos, or if you give it a few days before Shabbos. So let's see the explanation, the logic of that. Because if the market is only open on Shabbos, what's the difference if you have a conversation, or you hire, or go into partnership, however you want to call it? Partnership is different, but you hire for the Gentile to do this on Wednesday versus Friday. So he says like this: according to the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, you are permitted to give work to a non-Jew on Wednesday or Thursday, even if you do not define his wages, and even if it's impossible to accomplish it without working on the Shabbos, provided you do not tell him to work on Shabbos. Some reason, doesn't say why, the logic of this. So he says, this is a ruling of the Magen Avram, 247, 4 and 307.3. See Mishnah Berurah 247.13. But the Mishnah Berurah 307.12 seems to agree with the Eliyahu Rabbah ruling that it is not possible to accomplish the job without working on Shabbos. That if it's not possible for the accomplished job without working on Shabbos, then it is the same as telling him to work on Shabbos, and is not allowed even in the beginning of the week. So we have to examine the logic of the Magen Avram, who says this is permissible. Why does it make it? What's the difference If you say it on Wednesday, Thursday, if you say it on Friday, why is it so? It means basically the Magen Avram's thinking is that the very fact that it's not directly connected to Shabbos and there's a time in between separates you from the job being done, even if the job has to be done on Shabbos and even if the person's doing it for you and there's no other way to do it but on Shabbos. So the time makes a difference, where the Eli Rabbah doesn't agree with that and the Mishnah Berurah seems to agree with the Eli Rabbah. Okay, let's open up for questions now, and because we go into the next job of what kind of work is a challenge. Yes, Aaron.
Okay, so let's go with this. You live in farm country.
Try as possible, best as you can, to talk into the mic.
You hearing better now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you live in farm country, so not a lot of Jews. So they have their auctions for cows on Saturday, and you need the cows so you can kosher slaughter them and sell them to the Jewish market. So how do you make that work?
Yeah, that's I mean, that's a more complex question. We have to understand that there's a partnership. For instance, if you have a partnership with the Gentile, it's different if the Gentile is just an employee with no interest in the outcome of it. If you had a partnership, it's something else, because then the Gentiles totally working for themselves. They're part of the partnership.
So let me ask you this then. There are people, I don't agree with it, and they have proof that if you take off on Saturday, for people who weren't taking off on Saturday, said, oh, I'm going to lose a lot of business. Then they take off on Saturday, they make more money now than they did when they weren't keeping Shabbos. But there are people out there who have a partner who is Jew. One guy is Jew and one guy is Gentile. And on Saturday, they're open. And they kick all the Jews leave, but the Gentile keeps the store open on Saturday.
Okay, that we have to go into. They have to see the details of the situation and the relationship between the partnership, and we're going to get into those laws of partnership and ownership and how connected is the name of the Jew to the establishment. These are all part of the questions. There's also
okay, but
we also there's two prohibitions here. The number one prohibition is having a Gentile do work for you, and there's the second prohibition of the impression that the Gentile is doing work for you. It's not the same thing. Even in a case where the Gentile has an interest, but if no one knows that interest, there's laws of Maras Ayin. Maras Ayin is where there's people don't know the details of the relationship and think that the Gentile is doing work for you as opposed to a partnership.
so now just to end this, okay, so let's go back to the cows. So you could hire some guy and tell him these are the prices I will pay up to try to get the cheapest deal, and after Shabbos I'll pay you.
It all depends. It all depends on how connected how tight is the Shabbos time for this market? How connected are you for the market? How close are you to the market? And here we see clearly the Kitzur quotes that if there's time in between, that makes a difference according to
How much time?
the Magen Avram. He says to Wednesday, Thursday.
So you have to establish the job on Wednesday or Thursday.
Before Friday, yes.
Okay.
Rebecca.
Hi, I have a few questions if it's okay.
Sure.
So often I eat the Suda. I go to my brother's house for the Suda. I bring my own food, and he has a housekeeper who like helps them on Shabbos. So if without my saying anything, if she takes the food from me and she puts it in an oven that's already on, like even if the food has liquids or Kitzur, like she's doing something that I wouldn't be allowed to do, like is that okay or no?
Well, that's a problem. There's many questions to that question. If it's lachatchila b'diavad, if it's hefse meruba, if there's a lot of loss there, and also the question of the level of the prohibition. So if you have liquids and heating up or cooking, or like let's say the chont goes off and they put the chont on, are they also benefiting from it? There's different situations when there's a crisis versus this is what I plan on doing, and
Right.
there's difference also if you need to eat it warm, or if it needs to be heated up, or if it's just pleasant, or you're fine with eating it cold. All those are part of the problem.
Okay, no problem. So the whole discussion with Amazon, so like here, like they let you choose, do you want delivery on Saturday, on Wednesday, or on Friday, let's say. So can you choose the Saturday one if it's sooner,
Okay.
according to what you said?
Okay, so let's go over right here. We have the Chabad.org on this question. May I order a Shabbos delivery? In general, if a Jew is forbidden to do a certain act on Shabbos, which is what we just learned about, is also rabbinically forbidden, for him or her to ask the non-Jew to do so on his behalf, including in this prohibition is making a non-Jew on a weekday do work for you on the Shabbos. Means you pre-establish it. Now now that online shopping is becoming not only more popular, but in many places a necessity. If you live outside of places where you need the food, this is, people live in places where the only way they're able to live where they're living is by having the opportunity for Amazon. The question arises: is it permitted to place an order that is supposed to be delivered on Shabbos? And is there a difference if one orders through, for example, Amazon Prime or Instruct and
Instacart.
Instacart, not sure what that is, and Prime Now, okay. While the laws of asking a non-Jew to do work on Shabbos, referring to Amir al-Nachri, are a bit complex and beyond the scope of this article, we will focus on the specific question of placing an order meant to arrive on Shabbos. Okay, that's your question of Amazon. So delivery by Saturday, right? If it says delivery by Saturday, perhaps the most common issue nowadays is service like Amazon Prime that have 2-day shipping, which could mean that your order is guaranteed to be delivered by Saturday. However, if you read the fine print, that is really a delivery by date, as they have the capacity to deliver earlier and often do so. In fact, okay, that's not important. According to the most opinions, as long as you order the item with enough time for it to arrive before the Shabbos, or they have time, or they're allowed to deliver it after the Shabbos, same thing would apply, and you don't actually want it to arrive on Shabbos, it would be permitted to make the order, as the company is working on the Shabbos at its own discretion and for its own convenience. Your order does not obligate the company to work for you on Shabbos. So therefore, if it's a 2-day delivery, the problem is overnight delivery. Overnight delivery, placing a guaranteed overnight delivery on Friday to arrive on Shabbos is problematic. Unlike the previous scenario, to fulfill the terms of your order, the company needs to do it on the Shabbos. And therefore, he goes into, like I said, that it's impossible to do an overnight express. But let's just see that the Prime Now. Based on the above, it goes without saying that one cannot make an Instacart or Prime Now order that is set to be delivered specifically on Shabbos, since in that scenario you are essentially asking the non-Jew to work for you on Shabbos.
Okay. Can
Now,
I ask my next? Oh, yeah.
hold
go
on,
ahead.
let's just finish off because we had Aaron's question, so we might as well just address it here. For procedure for packages arriving on the Shabbos, what do you do if the package comes on the Shabbos, right? In a way that's allowed. If a package does arrive on the Shabbos, again, and it doesn't have to, but if it does, one should avoid taking the package from the delivery person's hand and instead show him or her where they to put it down. If the package contains items that are muktzah, it's forbidden for you that is forbidden to be used on the Shabbos, then one should not move the package until after Shabbos. If the package contains non-muktzah items, in other words, Jewish books, clothing, etc., and it was placed in a location we are permitted to carry, then there are differences of opinion as to whether it may be opened in a permissible manner. It means you're not cutting it open, and even used on the Shabbos, according to the Shulchan Aruch Rav. If the item is needed for Shabbos, one can be lenient and use it on the Shabbos. So, Aaron, is that a question? Hold on.
That answers it, but one guy told me, because the guard takes our packages, so we don't have to worry about it get stolen or nothing. So we can just leave it there. But my daughter took it, and it was nothing that was forbidden on Shabbos, but he said the way you open the package, even if you cut it, you still have to rip something, and it's not food that you...
So then you're going into the question of what the action is not permissible. It's different. The question we're here talking about is, well, we're not talking about you're violating the Shabbos on your own, doing anything wrong, but are you actually allowed to, if the thing is muksa, you obviously can't touch it. The thing is not muksa. Am I allowed, and I'm not violating the Shabbos by opening the package? It's not sealed, it's not taped, it's not glued, etc.
Gotcha.
Can I still open up the package and use it? So it seems to say that if you need it for the Shabbos, you could be lenient. Rebecca, before you get to the next question, I just want to ask, Barbara wanted to ask something. Barbara?
Yeah, I just want to make sure. So if now I don't order things to arrive on Shabbat, but sometimes it'll come early, and I don't plan on that. And I don't see the delivery person; they just leave it outside my door. I know what it is. I know it's not forbidden or anything. I can pick that package up and bring it in the house so long as I don't open it or anything. I mean, it's not something.
If it's not something that's muksa and you're permitted in general to move things from your porch into your house, then that's something
Okay.
else. You have to find out if bringing it from your porch to your house or from your front door to your house is considered bringing something from even a Carmelist, even a kind of public domain into a private domain. So that's another question. But if there's no issue for you to, if it's already in what's considered a private domain and it's permissible and it's not muksa, and so he says it's not so simple, but if it's must be, or if it's going to get damaged, let's say if you leave it outside and it's going to get wet, and that's something else. But if it's just sitting there and there's no problem, best maybe to leave it. Rebecca.
Can I ask my question?
Sure, yeah, please.
Is it okay to take, well, my understanding is that I'm not allowed to take, let's say, magazines that were delivered into my mailbox in my building on Shabbos, that I'm not allowed to take that out and touch it and read it because it was delivered from outside of the Tchum on Shabbos. Is that right?
Now, again, so if now listen, in the case of magazines just coming in, the magazines themselves are not the mailman or a woman had no obligation to deliver it on Shabbos. It happened to be on Shabbos. You didn't order it overnight express for Shabbos. That's usually what happens, right? So that's not a problem. The problem is over here, and your mailbox to your house is like I just answered Barbara, is not a problem of carrying from your, so that's not an issue. The issue you're just saying is that came on Shabbos, can you read the magazine that comes to your apartment on Shabbos? So based on what we said over here, that it says that that and it's placed in a location where you're permitted to carry, then there is a difference of opinion as to whether it may be opened in a permissible manner and even used on the Shabbos. According to Shulchan Aruch, Rav says if the item is needed for the Shabbos, one can be lenient and use it. It means it's being lenient. Reading a magazine that's not considered needed for Shabbos, you have to ask yourself, how does that fit into being needed for Shabbos? If it's going to be something of Torah that you want to learn on Shabbos, is different than if it's just going to be a gossip magazine that you just want to entertain yourself. If you really need to relax, I mean, again, these are all the questions of how you view the reading of the magazine with your comfort and your keeping the Shabbos.
Right. Okay. I got a new next door neighbor, like next door to my apartment, and they blast the music really, really, really loud Shabbos afternoon. So I'm not allowed to say anything, to knock on the door and say anything on Shabbos, even if I like hint about it, because that's gonna make him go and lower the music. I need to mention something before Shabbos, right?
Better to have that conversation before Shabbos, where you tell them that, listen, your music disturbs me on Shabbos, please don't do it. That's 100% permissible. Even on the Shabbos, I have to check, but even on the Shabbos, if it's in a way that it's absolutely unbearable, you're not having them do something on Shabbos. It means they're not doing
It's not that bad. It just gets in the way of my like davening and
if
learning and resting.
if it's beyond normal neighbor behavior, means they're too loud for how a behavior
Yeah, it is
behave.
loud.
So then
Okay.
it's not they're not doing a work for you on Shabbos. They've already established something that's negative. So you're not having them, the fact that you're saying, listen, you're bothering me. Your noise is you're not allowed to be making this noise in this place. That they should have, that means that it's not they're not doing a job for you. It's not like that the music is playing, now they're turning off the music for you. They had the music for themselves. It has nothing to do with you. It's bothering you. You're just letting them know that there's a situation that's bothering me and that they have to fix it. How they fix it's not your problem.
Okay, got it. And then last question. Are you allowed to walk either on a crosswalk or not on a crosswalk? Are you allowed to sort of like show like you would like to cross the street if it's gonna make the oncoming car, if it's gonna make the driver slow down?
Usually we try not to. We'll get into that discussion because it depends, like where you live. You know, if you're living in a normal, I say normal, I mean a regular, place where, there's it's normal for a person to, for it's not if you put it this way, if you're not living in Manhattan, I know you live in Manhattan. If you live in Manhattan, a place where people don't keep the red lights, there's like it'll be almost impossible for you to cross the street. If then that's something different. But if you live in a place where, it's possible, and it's just a question of taking another second or two is different than if you're living in a place where you could just literally won't be able to cross the street. It's not the same thing. Aaron.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to mention when you talk about the magazine. So half the people agree with the Aruch, half the people don't. So I'm one of the people who agree with the Aruch. I spent 3 weeks studying it on a Tuesday for three Tuesdays with another rabbi. But the idea about the magazine, so our rabbi leaves on the heater a number of magazines and newspapers. They're all Jewish. The Flatbush Jewish Journal, which is mostly news, but there are a couple of articles on Torah. It's just news. I take them back. I walk back with them. I don't care, and it gives me something to enjoy on Shabbos. It's all Jewish news.
That's different. That's what I'm saying. It's different if it's a difference if there's something of content that's part of your Shabbos experience. When he says over here, according to the Shulchan Aruch, if the item is needed for the Shabbos, you have to define.
None of it's needed. The only thing that's needed is Torah and a prayer book.
So that is. But I'm saying if you're talking about straight up gossip that has nothing to do with Judaism, you have to ask yourself how you could fit that into the context.
Magazine.
We're not here to judge what people are reading. Rebecca asked a specific question, so those.
Yeah, well, I will tell you this: that the rabbi brings up the fact that he brings it up in the shul. He says, if you could give up some of your New York Times reading to come to our early morning before Shabbos prayer service starts, it would be much appreciated. I go to it. It's Mishnayos, 45 minutes before Shabbos starts the service. But a lot of people read the New York Times.
I hear you. I hear you, Aaron. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining, and Shavua Tov and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Welcome.